Okay, now I think we have Deacon is going to come, Tigran is going to come and visit with us and share some of his stories as well.
With me a little bit. I'm a little rusty, so just be patient with me in front of all these people. My name is Tigran. I'm a deacon from LA, California, at St. Leon's Armenian Church Cathedral. I'm deaf. I'm not hard of hearing. I'm fully deaf. Completely deaf, can't hear anything out of either ear. So my experience through my travels as being a deacon in Orthodox churches, I've been Orthodox all my life.
Highlight, it's a highlight.
Oh, the highlight. The highlight. The highlight. I'm just going to give you some pointers. It won't be long, I promise. So I was born in Armenia, and I grew up there. And I went to, there was no access for deaf children. But my family.
So my family had a lot of priests and deacons in the family history, but they didn't really communicate that background to me. We didn't have a lot of communication in the family. So I was out and I had a worldly life because I didn't have access until I was a late teenager in high school. And then you probably are familiar with Jehovah's Witnesses. They told me that my church was false. And that started me questioning. And, so then, thank God, I was able to do some research. I fell in love with study, and I was able to say, no, my church is not false, it's true, and was able to defend that faith and that belief, right? But I was like, there's no deaf people in my church. So I went a couple of times to Protestant churches where there was some access. They had sign language, signers there. My uncle was a deacon, and he told me, he said, you can read the Bible, right? You can read yourself, so why are you going to the Protestant church? It's different. Stay home, don't go there. And so then I thought, okay, I decided to follow his advice, and I started to stay home. And I wondered, what do I do now? How do I find the right church? At that time, I was just going through life, and a few years later, I went into church, and I didn't tell anyone that I was deaf at that time, right? But the former deacon, who is now a priest, came up to me, and we sort of gestured, and they asked me if I wanted to serve. And out of the blue, I was like, "You want me to serve?" Sure. And then I went home, and I wasn't sure what was going on, but I realize now that probably God was leading us and them. The bishop approved me to become a server, and so I started that process. But it was very challenging. I did learn a lot. I would say it's probably been a journey of about 17 years that I've been serving. And it's a big difference from where I was at the beginning to where I am now. And that's what I'd like to share with you. That's why I'd like to share what things I see need to change, what things need to be improved. So that's why I'd like to share some of those highlights. I would say we have at least 30 people of faith in my congregation and my parish. Of course, they're not always there. And I would say we have 5 to 7, 5 to 10 regular attendees. Sometimes only 2 or 3 people come, but still, it doesn't matter if there's only 3 people there. Those 3 people came, and it's important to them. So we see each other on a regular basis. I see what church is supposed to be, right? We need to have sign language access. The Orthodox Church, the tradition, the liturgy, the foundation, sometimes it's hard to fit with sign language. Some people consider signing is breaking tradition, right? Because when you have the Holy Gospel, you're holding the Gospel. How can you sign and talk as well? So you have to set the Gospel down to sign, which would be a change of tradition, a break in tradition. So we need to work out some of these conventions, and some priests are okay with possibly, me setting down the Gospel or having acolytes coming to assist me to hold the Gospel, right? It's a long process getting to where we will be all agreed with how to handle Holy Tradition in the church and with signing. Deacon David asks, so if I'm signing the liturgy, do I face a congregation? Do I face east? How do I revere the altar? Do I bow all the way? How do I do the mechanics of the liturgy? And that is some of the things that are going to take some adjustments. So at certain times, like during the creed, I will turn and face a different orientation so that we can all share the creed together and speak that in unison. But there's a lot of pointers I could share with you. I think for now, maybe it's enough. We could maybe have a question and answer period if that would be allowed. Can we do that now? A Q&A time? So we could talk more about the mechanics. And enough about me. Let's open that up for Q&A now. Any questions that you all have?
So are there 30 people in the Armenian parish where you are, or is it
Yes.
specifically for the deaf and hard of hearing?
So in Los Angeles County, there's 30 deaf Armenians. I would say who live close to the parish are maybe 10, but the greater area is more than 100, but they're not all practicing. So there's one older gentleman who approached me, and he said, "You're young, I'm old, right? And to let you know, whatever you teach me, I'm a little embarrassed to have a younger person teaching me as an older person. So why don't you just do your thing with the young people?" So those are some of the challenges. And so I am in a mostly hearing parish. 30 of those members are deaf, right? So I stand on the side, the altar is there, and I'll stand on the side, sometimes on the side with the bishop or the other side. And we do have a balcony, a second floor. Sometimes I'll stand up there to do the liturgy. It can be distracting with all the movement in the front and at the altar up on the second floor. There's no distractions. It's easier to focus, and there's an easier view for the parishioners to see everything that's happening.
Have you already tried, have you served as a deacon while you sign
Yes.
as well?
Yes. I've done baptisms, I've done weddings, I've done funerals. And yes. I've done the chalice. That's challenging to sign and be a chalice bearer. I've been a thurifer, but I haven't been able to sign the censer. Yeah, censing, doing the incense. In the Western Rite, it's called thurifer, so I use my Western Rite terminology and be correct to use the Eastern Rite terminology. But if there are deaf people in the congregation, then the priest has me come out and they'll tell me where we're at, and I'll sign that alongside them. So we haven't had any problems doing that in my parish. So should I'll stand up so that everyone can see me. Can everyone see me? Can all the deaf members here see me? Okay, so my question, I typically read the liturgy as it's written, but the English, the terminology is very dense. I grew up speaking English and signing English, but I don't know if there's a possibility of using captioning, maybe AI captioning, or having some sort of display that would show captioning during the Divine Liturgy. That's a good question. That's a good question, right? So I'm a bookworm. I love to read, but you have to think about deaf people in general. Many of them can't read the depth of the English in the liturgy, or they'll read the word, but they don't understand the theological meaning before that. And Hannah's saying yes, but some people can use that captioning. And Tigran's responding that some churches do have a display depending on the specific parish. There are some with displays, and some, like as a deacon, I'll follow the page numbers, and they'll forward the display to follow along with where we are in the liturgy. And if some people don't understand what specific terminology is, we'll have a session that explains what those words in the liturgy are. So like during a funeral, you'll have the priest leading and then other acolytes and servers carrying the cross, right? So then you can do some brief explanation of what this is. And like Bishop Garrison could explain, this is that. And then that would be also accessible. There's vision to see some of those things. You don't have to be interpreting everything because some things are just visual. And then the liturgy, I would say 50% of the liturgy, you already know it. And there's a lot of words like and, Lord, mercy, right? Like you already know these terms. Those are easy things. There's no excuse to not follow along. But make sure that your attitude is right, that you have a worshipful attitude, the right heart, that you're worshiping in spirit and truth, and that leads us closer to God. I hope that answers your question. Sort of. Any other questions?
If you don't have a priest who knows ASL, how do you do confession?
Yes, good question. So my cousin is a priest, and I asked, how do you do confession, like priest to priest confession? And my cousin said sometimes we don't talk to each other. He'll do confession via letter. He'll write things out and then show that to the priest. And they're like, oh, okay, that's great. So I do my confessions in written form. I write my confessions out, show the priest reads it. And then they might want to answer me right now, but they'll let me know that they'll respond later, but they go ahead and proceed through the confessional rite and then give me the response at a later time. I read their information and then we burn what we have written. So I am curious, you said that there are 30 deaf parishioners that don't come every Sunday. I understand that. I work with deaf clients, several of them in Georgia, and I was wondering if a lot of deaf people have SSDI, and so the first week of the month they might have money to afford to go to church to drive or to take a bus or anything like that. So I'm curious if you find that, if you typically have more people coming on the first of the month, and if do you think that's the reason that folks are coming because of a financial reason, or do you think it's something else? And to and saying that's a good question. I do confront that situation often, but it's typically an excuse. If someone is devoted to the church and to the parish, if they love the Lord, they will find a way to make it to liturgy. There's always a reason to not go to liturgy, always. And, maybe one or two people I identify that is a legitimate problem, and so I'll provide a solution. And then we're forced to ask with the bishop, what is it? What's their reasoning? What's their heart posture, right? We don't know it. It's different for each person.
parishioner members drive the other parish member to church. I don't know how to sign that.
Right. Right. Yeah. Yeah, that can happen.
Who's your backup if you can't be at church?
I have a volunteer who's female. She sings in the choir, and she will sign, but she's not a certified interpreter, but she's willing to volunteer, and she's done that for many years. In fact, this morning, I saw a post. She wanted to come, but she couldn't come to this conference because she had to go to another youth conference. It's, I'll show you the video. It's another conference where a lot of youth people signing, and there's no deaf people there, but she's there and she's signing for that. So if I'm not there, then this woman is there. So thank God there's also 3 young signers in the parish that are growing. And then there's one other deacon who knows sign language but is a little shy. So I've been encouraging them to do more. And so we're growing the ministry. Thank you.
How, we don't have any deaf members of our congregation. Savannah's with me, and she's still, developing her skills and her ASL. And we want to reach out more to the deaf and hard of hearing in our community through the Deaf Action Center and other connections we have. But at the same time, we want to make sure that we don't do anything that's offensive to the deaf and hard of hearing community. So how do we start a deaf and hard of hearing ministry in the church when we don't have any deaf or hard of hearing Christians there without seeming like we're entering into a community that we may not belong in? Am I phrasing this correctly? Does that make sense? Doing it with respect. Yes.
Yes, I understand completely. I understand completely. I have a similar struggle. There's a lot of deaf people that say they feel like they don't belong in the church because there's no access, there's no screen, there's no professional interpreters, this, that, and the other thing. And I'm like, okay, right? But I'm here, or Savannah, or you, right? We're trying to do something, right? But I think deaf people prefer going to their own church, right? But one priest was saying, so, okay, well, if you want your own deaf church, that's fine, but then we don't see growth. So how do you create a deaf church without growth? It's not possible. If you start going to a hearing church, grow a deaf ministry, I always joke, right? Like, we've got a seed. After the seed dies, it grows, right? So right now what I see in the church, I feel like sometimes like Moses, if you know what I mean. Because years of working journey, 40-year journey, God's giving them manna. God's giving them that on the earth for them to collect. And the Israelites are still complaining about what they've got, right? So then the second generation thrived and grew. So maybe the first generation is not going to see that return, I don't know.
So keep moving forward.
Yes, exactly. All right. Also, one more thing I wanted to say in sort of in response to the deaf signers, and technology. We want to make, like when you go to a museum or a tour, there'll be a little kiosk where you've got a signing, right? We would like to do that kind of video that would maybe fit with the liturgy. That's a good idea, where you could have some canned ASL videos that would follow along with that. I don't know how to do that. That might be something that would work in the future. And Hannah's saying, we've got the divine liturgy. So just in response to what you were saying, Deacon Tigran, there is the Bible translation. I've used it before. It's online. I've used that for after Easter, after Pascha. There's that one service where you've got the scripture reading, agape. Yeah, agape this verse. Thank you. So you can read that. It's inside. There's a translation that you could just copy, right? So we could use that to build some more things within the Orthodox Church. And you guys say, yes, we can continue to do that.
And we're hoping to make some videos this afternoon. Yeah, to help.
Okay, yeah, that's great.
Where's Savannah? Where's Savannah?
Sorry.
Okay. Deacon, is Deacon finished any other questions?
I'm done. Yeah, I'm done unless there's.
Okay.
Oh, actually, excuse me. Savannah, do you have a question? No?
Do we have a little time left in this session? What time is it in?
It's 9:45. So
Yeah.
I think technically we're into the next session, but that's okay.
Okay,
Okay, next is you.
okay. So, never mind, we're already in the next session, we'll stick to the schedule. Okay.
Yeah, right.
We're Orthodox, time doesn't matter.
We have plenty of time, right? On into this evening. Okay, great. Well, thank you. Thank you for having me here.
Yeah.
I appreciate the help. Yes, thank you. Thanks
Thank
be to
you.
God.
I think we're gonna take a 5 to 10 minute break, get some water or coffee, and then we'll be back in here in like 5 minutes.
I didn't think about that, but I think I was gonna probably Chad.
I know, I really do think that was probably.
Do you mind